And we're having a cup of coffee, and he says, how come you got fired? And I said, well, I don't know what you mean, Jack. He said, well, I heard you were fired. And I said, well, I hadn't heard anything about it. Yet. So I went down to the studio, and I was fired.
But you don't know why.
No.
I blabbed, that's why. I was the guy that
Is
did
that
it,
right?
just so
Okay.
you know.
It was the day we'd interviewed a guy who had written a book called Jesus Was a Leo. And I hung up on him after about 8 minutes of the interview. Brian Cox and I were rolling on the floor for about 3 minutes of a commercial break, but that was the only time in my career I ever hung up on a guest.
Oh, damn. That thing's still on tape.
Denny Carr has no keys to get in. So who's going to do the morning show? Denny Carr has no keys to get in. So the news guy's already in there, but he's throwing rocks up at the window, trying to get, and he was late. I think that's the only time in his life that Denny Carr has ever been late.
And this is my old friend Saunders, when he went in to visit his good old friend Bill Hicks, who used to do the all-night show on radio. And of course they had a couple of gallons of pop, and Saunders came in about 1 o'clock in the morning, and as a result they got into the pop and they spun the records all night. And Vern Dallin got up early that morning to catch a plane or whatever, and he turned on radio, and of course the first thing he heard was, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Edelman's going to bring you the news for all you Christians and all you Jews. And I don't have to tell you that Vern didn't go to the airport. He went right to the station, and Vern, being an engineer in his own right, pulled every switch and turned the whole bloody thing off until such time as the morning guys came in.
Bob and I are sitting in the beer parlor in the Windsor Hotel lamenting about the fact that there is no news going on for the last 2 weeks. Meanwhile, there was a murder going on 1 floor above us in the Windsor Hotel.
I remember a friend of mine, Jerry Totten, God bless him, he's left us now. He died actually a few years ago. But Jerry talked about a unique space experience one day when he was reading the newscast. He told everybody in Saskatoon and throughout Saskatchewan that a giant orgasm was making its way toward the Earth.
So we open the phone lines, and the first caller says, in a very excited voice, it's a woman, and she says, and she's just really, it's really difficult for her to get this out, and she says, I think that all men should be castrated. And I said, oh.
One of the years that I was working with Wally and Denny, we announced to the people of Saskatchewan on the 1st of April, whatever year it was, I think it was 76 or 77, that CRTC regulations insisted that we now had to broadcast 33% of our on-air time in French. Whereupon we decided that we would demonstrate this to the hilt. We had people at the university doing commercials in French. We had Wally, I think, doing the weather in French. We had Denny doing some spots in French, 33% of the time. And the lines just lit up. People in Saskatchewan were so infuriated that this had happened, that the CRTC could do such a thing to Saskatchewan, the people of Saskatchewan and CFQC.
They were pretty pissed off on that one.
That's the phrase, they were pissed off. However, what we decided to do to Dennis was a double cross. Not only were we making him, go through hell, sitting in his office, listening to all this, knowing full well that the phones were were lighting up throughout the morning, we then called Denise Stambuck across the street at CBC and had her send a telex. Remember telexes?
Telex.
Way back then.
Telex.
A telex informing Dennis Fisher that the CRTC in Winnipeg, the regional office, was about to reconsider CFQC's license based on the fact that they were abusing the airwaves with such lies. Poor Dennis sat there for 3 hours listening to all this with the telegram in hand, I'm sure sweating bullets, until he finally realized he'd been had. And we told him at lunch, Dennis, bless your heart, you're the best station manager I have ever worked for. You were so tolerant, so giving. I don't know how you put up with us, but we got you once.
Funniest thing about CFQC Radio is not only did they hire me once, but they hired me twice. It was the place we learned about broadcasting. It was the place we learned how to party hard, work hard, a lot of fun memories. Thanks for everything.
And a gracious good afternoon to you. Good afternoon. About the time that Wally had a Volkswagen, and he came to work one morning in the winter and went in on his shift, and when he came out, the Volkswagen was absolutely covered with snow. You couldn't see the Volkswagen. The boys had covered it with snow from downstairs in Murphy's.
Well, back in about 67, 68, Danny used to like to keep a very ugly, beat-up pair of sneakers, well, sort of loafers in the library. And when he went into the control room, he would put on his sneakers. And one April Fool's morning, he came to work and discovered that somebody had kind of redesigned them and painted them silver. And whoever had painted them thought it was particularly impressive and really lovely. So when Denny saw it, he was not happy, and he went around really bugging all the staff. Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? And of course, I knew who did it, but I'm not a stoolie. So it took 30 years before I finally admitted that I had painted them silver and put in fluorescent laces.
About the sign that was up on the wall in the clothing, in the girls' factory, whatever they manufactured. And the sign said, if your sweater's too big, watch out for the machines. If it's too small, watch out for the machinists. And Vern Dallin was in there like a shot, telling Jack that wasn't the sort of thing that they like to have on CFQC radio.
Along with all the wonderful professional people we had in those days, there were a few that were a little off. They were, well, today we'd call them madmen. Then we just called them characters. And one of those persons you may not have heard of was called Bill Hicks. I broke in with Bill, and Bill loved to do things like stop records on the air so that you're listening, it just like gone, and then he'd spin backwards and say, Greg, don't play that, that's raucous music.
I can remember the storm of 1955, and it was really in the springtime when there shouldn't have been any snow, but the snow came down very heavy, power lines were down. For a while, all communication was out, and we couldn't broadcast from the radio station. We had to go out to the transmitter.
I was just dizzy reading it. It was the most fabulous.
I haven't reviewed that book yet, and I don't think it should be publicized until it has been reviewed.
Oh, it's been reviewed in the Globe.
It has.
Yes, the woman said he had the writing sensitivity of a pit bull.